Despite all the issues, folks, guess what? The Coastal Division is still within grasp, but got to win this one, most likely. Virginia Tech on the road. Miami Hurricanes live right here, the voice of college football for the next 60. There's the wholesome one. He's here, ready to take your comments and questions and talk Miami football. Just a few minutes away from bringing in Paul Van Wagner from ESPN Blacksburg to talk up the Hokies with us. And shoot, we'll let Paul crash the party right out of the gate. He just has to promise to be good and keep it down for a little while.
All right, I'll do my best.
Okay. Wholesome one, boy, how you doing this week?
It's been a tough one, man. You know, for me personally, Holloway, the guy, doing well, building a good rapport, networking, growing as a human. But covering the Miami Hurricanes has been tough. And I think it also comes with, self-inflicted wounds. So what I mean by that is every offseason, we start to drink the Kool-Aid and start to look at star ratings, and we start to look at highlight tapes, and we start to think that these young men are above their means. And eventually you have to go out there and start playing games. So the unwarranted, expectations that us as fans put on these young men and put on their staff, that's on us. That has nothing to do with going out there looking like you don't want to play. That has nothing to do with going out there and getting your ass whooped by Middle Tennessee State and then coming out slow the very next week out of a bye, or having a team like North Carolina feel like they could just go for it on fourth down because they know you have no fight in you. Those kinds of things, that has nothing to do with us. That has nothing to do with pen and paper. That has to do with this staff and these players being able to pull their head out of their behind and play football for 60 minutes. Now, the second half of that game, I was very proud. There were even some things towards the end of the first half of the North Carolina game that I was very, very happy with. And I saw them go out there and fight because that was on the teetering or the cusp, or Wrestling Federation reference there, on the cusp of a Wile E. Coyote ass whooping. Okay, it was about to get weird, and it was about to get bad, and we were about to get blown out. But I saw a team that went out and got a touchdown with about 4 minutes left, got the ball back off their interception, scored another touchdown, and went in, down by 4 as opposed to being down by 4 touchdowns, which is what it felt like North Carolina was about to put on Miami. So there's a lot, and with respect to Paul, we'll get on to Virginia Tech because honestly, the North Carolina game is behind us. So if you have any other questions about UNC, Mark, I have no problem answering them, but I think got to move on.
Well, let's do exactly that. We'll move on to Paul and Virginia Tech. And if any folks in the chat have any comments or questions pertaining to North Carolina, obviously, wholesome one, as you continue to break down the team, a lot of that's going to relate back to the North Carolina game and any particular situations or performances there. But we got Paul Van Wagner on the line from ESPN Blacksburg. Paul, what's going on? Uh-oh.
Did he mute himself?
No, I just believe he's frozen.
Good? Okay, we can hear you, Paul.
Me? You got me?
Okay,
there you go.
All right. Glad
moves.
to be back. Second time on with you guys. I'm looking forward to this. Very excited. Wholesome one, though, I got to tell you, you think it's hard being a Miami fan, covering Miami? Ooh, son. You got to come to Blacksburg.
I can only imagine, man. And that's the tough part, man. Miami isn't my personal alma mater. It's my father's alma mater, and a bunch of family members who went to Miami. And we grew up rooting for it. But, when it's so personal and it just really hurts, and you spend time covering the recruiting and looking into who 4 or 5 years from now is interested and coaches, and you spend all this time, and we wait 8 months out of the year to get this small sample size of the year to watch your team go out there and play football. And the product in which that we've been seeing from both these teams is honestly despicable. And it's heartbreaking because people put time, effort, and money into this. And to be honest with you, both teams have really disappointed, and both teams, just at some points look like they don't care. And that to me is worse than anything. You go out there, you try your behind off, and someone's better than you, that's different. But going out there and looking as though you could give a crap less that there's a football game today, it's just unacceptable.
The good news for us in Blacksburg is we kind of knew that this was coming, right? Justin Fuente left the cover very for Virginia Tech, and Brent Pry's got his work cut out for him. It's an uphill battle. He's going to have to. There's going to be struggles. There's going to be a lot of struggles here in Blacksburg, and it's just a matter of trying to find those kids that want to come and want to be Hokies and want to play here, and you kind of have to start. You're basically just rebuilding the program from scratch. Justin Fuente inherited a program that was, his first year, 10-win team, right? Played in the ACC championship, had an opportunity. We're down to Clemson by 7 points with the ball as time ran out, right? Like, so you had a good team, you had a good program, and you ran that thing into the ground. And now it's up to Brent Pry and his staff to try to bring it back. And, it's going to take time. That's the only thing I can say about that, is it's absolutely going to take a lot of time.
So, Paul, is it safe to say that this Virginia Tech roster is the worst Virginia Tech roster since early in Frank Beamer's career?
Yeah, I would say so. Originally we thought that when you kind of looked at the depth chart, you went, okay, the ones are going to be okay. And as long as nobody gets injured, and we knew that was not going to be the case because it's football, everybody gets injured, right? But the ones are going to be okay. And as long as we can keep the ones in there, like, we'll be fine. But I'm going to tell you right now, the gap between the Virginia Tech ones and, pick another ACC team. It doesn't even have to be Miami, like right now, Syracuse is a pretty decent team, but Syracuse would beat Virginia Tech by 4 touchdowns. Obviously we saw what Pitt did, so like, it's just, there wasn't a lot of depth, and it really doesn't look like there's a whole lot at the top end either for the Hokies at this point.
Yeah, I could probably second that as far as this one of the, because I've been studying the program since 2009, 2010, covering the program since about 2018. So there's been a nice stint in between there while I was being recruited as a player, playing my college ball, and now as a media person. But Virginia Tech is somebody Miami's been playing every year, and it would always be such a premium game, regardless if it's a noon kickoff, if it's a 3:30, if it's in Blacksburg, if it's down in Miami Gardens. It didn't matter. These two teams, and the thing about this rivalry that was completely different than some of our other rivalries, it was kind of built in respect. It was always like, it used to be even a battle of special teams. Beamer ball versus Miami special teams was amazing to watch too. It was a true 3 phases of the game where you were like, I can go use the restroom because they're punting. Nope, because Virginia Tech might block this punt, and vice versa. So I grew up with a great respect for the Hokies. Sometimes we would lose and it would hurt, but it's like, hey, it's Virginia Tech, Miami, man. It's a really good game. The last couple of years, it hasn't really felt like that. Last year, Miami kind of pulled away late too. I believe something like that could happen this year, but I also know that every game is different. And I watched this Virginia Tech team, as I'm breaking them down against Pitt, hop out on them and show a different level of energy that they hadn't shown all year. And from my Miami perspective, I'm hoping that was all they had left, and then they kind of threw it out there through the kitchen sink, and then that's it. That's all they had left. But a sellout Lane Stadium does that to people, okay? And he might get another lighten up there, and we'll see what happens on Saturday.
I mean, I'll tell you this about Lane Stadium, and I had an opportunity to go to Mark's second favorite stadium, the Big House, a couple of weeks ago, and 110,000 people, and it's not nearly as loud as Lane Stadium with 60,000. And I think that what that is Lane Stadium, the way the bleachers are, the way the stands are, you are right on top of the field, right? Like, where at the Big House, it's kind of more of a gentle curve to the bowl, and the sound just kind of escapes out of there. But yeah, like, Lane Stadium is a bad place to play. I mean, and I hope that the Hokies bring that, because it's funny too, because you mentioned the rivalry, and we talk a lot with former players and even some current players, and you ask them, like, give me your top 3 rivals, top 3 ACC rivals, or top 3 rivals all time. And to a man, they always say, especially the older guys, the guys that are my age or even a little bit younger, they'll say it's in no particular order: West Virginia, Virginia, and Miami. And you can stack them 1, 2, 3, however you want. But those 3 always come up. It's always those three schools. Like, so the rivalry is real. I hate the 3-5-5 schedule because we only get to play Miami every 2 years. I thought that the ACC really bleeped up that scheduling thing by not putting Virginia Tech and Miami together.
And I think we need each other. I mean, look at what was the APC, the AB. Now this was a while back now because it was 2017. But you look at, was it one loss Virginia Tech or were both teams undefeated?
I think it was one loss Virginia Tech.
One loss Virginia Tech, undefeated Miami, a top 18, I want to say, matchup. That was, and guess what? ABC, 8 p.m. kickoff. So it still has some zest to it, and
there's juice
it could come back. It could definitely come back. And you know how I feel about your head coach. I sang his praises before I even watched the spring game, man. Been a huge fan of Coach Fry.
And I think Coach Fry is going to be fine. Like the Hokie Nation is a very fickle batch of people, and they will quickly turn on him. But those of us that have common sense realize that, hey, like you got to give the guy at least. I told somebody today it's going to be a 5-year process, right? This year and next year are going to suck. Like they're going to be bad. Like just pack it up, take the lumps, and go. Year 3, you start to see the turnaround. Year 4, things get better, and by year 5, like you should be back to competing for ACC championships, right? So that's the hope, that's the goal. But hopefully, Hokie Nation kind of tempers themselves a little bit and relaxes.
I know how that feels, man. As a Miami fan, Coach Cristobal he's our guy. He's an alumni. He's from Miami. He went to Miami Columbus. And he still isn't good enough for some people. So I know how it feels to cover the program and know deep down inside that someone is really building a great foundation. He's a Mason and he's laying great foundation. Great blueprint is already laid out. And he's already put down the first couple of bricks. And people still want to blow it up every couple of weeks. So I definitely get that. Mark, you look like you were trying to say something. Go ahead.
No. Well, Paul's talking about building a program, and you need depth. That there are certain tenets that you need. Depth would be one to really compete for a conference championship. Another would be the guy, obviously, that starts the whole thing at the quarterback position. Grant Wells, I wouldn't consider to be that guy. Have they recruited guys that are waiting in the wings that may be the answer at quarterback? Doesn't sound like yet. Okay.
So
I was going to say that didn't sound too reassuring there.
Okay, so here's my take on that, right? I don't see these kids in practice every day. I don't know what they look like. I'm assuming that the coaches have made the decision based off of who gives Virginia Tech the best chance to win. I agree. I don't know that Grant Wells is the guy to lead the Hokies, moving forward. I don't know. But if it's the younger guys aren't really getting a crack at this thing. So, I don't know. They have a couple of a quarterback coming in as a recruit this year, 3-star kid out of Georgia. I can't remember his name right now. But he's not going to be ready. Like you're not going to toss that kid into the fire. You're not going to throw him out there against the likes of Miami and Pitt and Syracuse next year. So again, year 3, that's, this is year 1. Like we're going to have to get to year 3. So.
I'm with you, man. The quarterback position. I mean, I don't know if Mark was about to ask us about our quarterback situation, but is that where you were going with the Mark?
No, you've got the guy. You've got 2 guys. Actually, a lot of people would say you've got 2 guys, and obviously one of them threw 57 passes and kind of got right last week for the most part, right? Wholesome one.
I would agree.
Okay.
I would agree. I think that's Miami's way of winning football, and I understand who Coach Cristobal is as a former offensive lineman in high school and a defensive lineman in college. I understand that approach. I understand how you want to get things done and you want to maul people off the ball and you want to be Hulk Hogan, rah, rah. That's just not how the game is played right now. You got to be a little bit more balanced. Okay, you can't just be Washington State and under Mike Leach, which is you see him at Mississippi State. He's understanding the importance of running the ball now too. So he's gone from more like an 80-20 approach pass run to more of your 60-40, where they still pass a little bit more than they run, but they still incorporate that in. You have to be able to do both, not only when you need to, but at the behest of the defense. Meaning we can come out in multiple different formations. You don't know what we're about to do. You don't know what the route combination is, but you don't know whether it's run or pass. We should be able to do it smoothly. I just don't think that people were fair as far as thinking that we should be able to do all of that in 8 months. There's a lot that we have to build and a lot that Coach Cristobal and this staff has to teach the proper way and reteach and reteach and reteach and reteach. To get our young men to work. And we also have to have our young men go out there and make plays. I'm not going to use the term execute because everyone uses that. And it's like trust the process. Makes you want to upchuck every time you hear it. But you have to go out there and make football plays. And I'm no longer going to keep pointing the finger at our staff. When I know these people are established, we got to get these young men to make football plays. And it's just that simple.
Paul, you know the program so much better than I do, but I want to challenge your 3-year plan to contention a little bit and maybe speed it up based on this. Well, you know what? I just thought of another factor that's pushing back on me. In the current divisional format, we're seeing the likes of Georgia Tech and Duke suddenly become like contenders in a division that's just a mess.
Right.
But obviously we know that the divisions go away next year, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
23, like that. Yep.
Yep.
So, the current power structure is it's leaning probably heavier toward the Atlantic more than it ever has.
Yeah. Yep. And that's fair. But I think, the biggest thing about the ACC, right? And I think Wholesome One will agree with me on this. Like, yeah, you got Clemson, you got Louisville, you got Tallahassee. Did I do that right? Did I say that right?
I love it.
All
That's
right,
why
all right.
I always say Virginia Tech for you. I will say Virginia Tech just for you.
I know. And obviously you need them to be strong. But you also need a strong Miami. You need a strong Virginia Tech. You need a strong North Carolina. Wake Forest or NC State need to be strong, right? So, yes, it does lean heavily towards the Atlantic, but I mean, you look at that Atlantic division right now, and I mean, it's kind of Clemson, NC State, everybody else. I think that the divisions going away aren't going to hurt us as much as some people think. Plus, I think from the strength standpoint of the ACC, I mean, how many times in the last 3 years have the two best teams both been in the Atlantic, but, somebody comes out of the Coastal and gets to be the sacrificial lamb for Clemson. So, like, if that means that, NC State or one of the other Atlantic teams, ends up getting that spot in the ACC championship, just give us a strong ACC championship game.
Mm-hmm. I would second that notion. I mean, I remember a couple of times where you all went and played Clemson in Charlotte. I even remember in 2015, when Larry Fedora UNC, when it was the powder blue versus orange, and they both wore their home jerseys, they took them to within an onside kick. So you got to be able to present a team that's good enough to get out there. And the best thing we could ask for is at the end of the season, you get majority of your side to make a bowl, somewhere in between that 7 to 9 win range. And that's how you're able to create great competition. And we all push each other. I root for everybody except for Tallahassee. I would never do that. So it's just, I want to see these other teams because I think that's going to make Miami never feel like they could just walk in and roll over people, because that's not the way college football is moving right now. There's been a better balance. There still is the top 1%, but then there's been a nice balance to where maybe the 12th and the 40th team are all within maybe a touchdown or two on a field. And that to me is great for the game and great for the product of college football.
Agreed.
I want to make sure I get this straight. So Paul's letting us know that the ACC's better when Tallahassee's better. Blacksburg, Chapel Hill, Winston-Salem, Raleigh, Coral Gables, they're all better.
Yep.
Right? Yep. Okay. Just want to make sure. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's because right now, like the perception, right? The perception nationally, and probably rightly so, is it's Clemson and everybody else, right? Like, I mean,
I think Clemson played the two best teams on their schedule and the two best teams that could possibly challenge them the last 2 weeks. And
And you're not wrong for that.
Wake
You are
Forest
not
gave them
wrong.
a heck of a game. NC State did for a half, but Clemson certainly showed that they were a much better team in the second half.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah,
That's what it looks like to me right now.
The demise of Dabo Swinney has been greatly exaggerated. Let's just say that.
And I think he gave the rest of this conference a couple years, not a couple, I would say 2 years. Gave us 2 years because Clemson's been kind of, for the last 2 seasons, since they lost that championship game against LSU, we had an opportunity in 21 to kind of try to, put it together in 20 and 21, and then the rest of us. And NC State proved it last year that you could do it after a while and you could give them a nice run for their money. But at the end of the day, Miami, we haven't got our stuff together, and Virginia Tech, you all, it's been a tough go, but you're playing the long game, and that works out.
I'll tell you this, and I mean this with all due respect to Hurricane Nation. I am confused as hell as how you all aren't constantly competing. Like, you look at the star ratings, like, even if half those kids don't work out, which is a ridiculous number, like, that's never going to happen, right? But even if half those kids don't work out, like, you all still have so damn much talent on that roster. And I don't know if that's, you mentioned execution, making football plays, Wholesome one. Like, I don't know if it's just not making football plays. I don't know what it is, but like, we all sit back. I can speak for the entire rest of the ACC when I say we all sit back and we look at Miami and we go, how in the bleep are they not Clemson, right? Like, I mean, if you could explain that to the rest of us, man, I need to bottle that stuff, because, like, every year we have that conversation, right? Of, man, you look at the talent. You look at top to bottom. You look like 5-star, 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 4-star, like list of 4 stars. Like, you got guys out there that, man, we come down there and we would fight you all in the street just to give us half those kids, right? And it just, like right there, 13th ranked recruiting class in the nation. You're right above Michigan.
That's the 13th best roster.
Okay. Yeah.
That's the 13th best. So that's the 4-year composite by 247 Sports for the entire roster.
And again, this isn't me. Like, I'm not taking shots. I'm not throwing shade. Like, I'm genuinely confused at how every year Miami's not just trucking everybody.
Paul, it's one of those conversations where...
Stop it, Mark. I know what you're doing.
I'm looking. I didn't know I'd have to scroll that. My fingers are getting tired from scrolling that much. There we go.
There
53rd.
Hey, 53rd. Damn.
Hey, Purdue's at 52, and they're a pretty good football team, and so is Minnesota at 51.
Yeah. Scoo. Shout out to PJ Fleck, man. What a great guy. Paul, to be honest with you, man, I wish we had. I have answers for you, so I'll start out with this. Culture, and that term is, people throw it out all the time, but
sure,
there comes a point when you build a true program, and you get to a point where it's truly plug and play, where a young man, regardless of the star system, if you had an offer from Miami, you picked you up, we put you in there in the weight room with Andrew Swayze and his strength and conditioning staff. And we either sent you to the offensive room or the defensive room, and you went out to be a top 3-round pick by the time our president shook your hand and you're walking out as a redshirt junior and going off to be a top 75 pick in the NFL draft.
Yep.
Those days have been gone for about 10 to 12 years. We've had a couple spurts, but there comes a point where we have to be honest with yourselves. So in 1995, we hired Butch Davis. Name rings bells for both of you too, right? Well, in between that time, from 95 to, I want to say about 99, Miami had a bunch of struggles where they were just fighting and clawing, while Virginia Tech is going on to play national championship games. And Tallahassee is one of the best teams of the 90s. The Florida Gators are now starting to creep. So more south and south and south, and really grab some Broward County guys, a couple Dade County guys, and really take over the state of Florida in their own way through the SEC. But then you got into 2000, and they fielded one of the best teams, arguably the best team in the country, and they finished out in the top three. They beat Florida in the Sugar Bowl, and he departs. But what they did was they handed it off to somebody who had already been here since 1995 as our OC, and kind of just kept things going on for the next 5 years. But the culture kind of was still there. The talent was still there. Now, just adding talent and throwing a bunch of stuff on a pile of crap doesn't turn it into pancakes. It had to originally have been pancakes. And yeah, you put a little syrup on there, and you put a little chocolate chips on there, you put a little peanut butter on there, and yeah, different flavors for different people, but it still worked.
Yeah.
And when I really did a deep dive into how long of a span that was, so from 95 to 2005, Miami had not only some of the best recruiting classes, but Miami consistently finished in the top 10. Miami consistently finished in the top 15. Football, like on the field wise, not just recruiting wise. Miami has finished in recruiting, in on-field production, AP poll, final poll. In the last 10 years, Miami was ranked in the top 25 3 times.
Yeah.
So what was happening was all the off-the-field stuff looked good. The recruiting, the hoopla, the throwing up the U, the turnover chain, all that kind of stuff, it looked good. But what the actual recipe, did anyone in that kitchen know how to truly make the right pancake recipe to serve to the field? And we didn't have that, man. And I think I'm there and I'm calm about it because when I look at Coach Cristobal, I see some of those Butch Davis things where you're there, you're fighting, you got a stupid loss that you don't want, but you see a team growing before your eyes. And it's not the sense that, oh, this looks good, we just got to make a couple plays. And I don't like quoting Tallahassee people, but Bobby Bowden put it simply. You build the program in a couple phases. You lose by a lot, you lose by a little, then you win by a little, then you start to win by a lot. It's just that simple. And unfortunately, there is going to be some growing pains. There is going to be some filtering out of some players. There is going to have to be some huge talents influx, but you got to get it into the mind of our young men how to do this football thing right all the damn time. Not when you just want to, not when it looks good, not when you're up by 20 and we're dancing on the sideline and talking to other people, other teams' girlfriends are dancing on their logo. It's about doing it the right way, even when you're down by 40 or you're up by 20 and you're winning championships. So I trust Coach Cristobal to be the guy to do that.
Yeah, I think the teams are running a very parallel line, right? I mean, as far as new coach, new culture, got to build this thing. Now, obviously, Miami's going to get the influx of talent much quicker, just simply based off the fact that they are Miami. Like you are still, even if the wins and losses don't show it, you all are still a blue chip program. You all are still like you're in the conversation with the likes of Alabama, with Columbus, with Michigan, right? I mean, you all are in that conversation.
Wait, is Michigan in that conference? Okay, keep going.
Who was in the playoffs last year, Mark? Come on.
Uh-oh.
You got to sustain that though.
Did you like? I don't want to get off on a tangent because this is the Miami page.
Was in the playoffs.
Did you watch that game?
I'll answer that question. Cincinnati was in the playoffs. Are they a great program?
I don't know. No, maybe. I don't know. There were no great programs last year other than Alabama and Georgia.
Yes,
but
Michigan
I mean,
got the job done. Absolutely.
Yeah, but I mean, it's that brand, right? Miami is a brand, and like I mentioned the 5-year plan, right? Like I think Miami can do the 5-year plan in 3 years if they do this thing right. This year's going to be bad. Next year will be better. By year 3, it's going to be like people are going to be going, "Holy shit, we got to play Miami this week." All right, chalk up. That's an L. Chalk it up. Let's go, right? Like I really believe that, and I think that that's good for the ACC. Like give us more good Miami, even though for the rest of us, it sucks. Good Miami is good for the ACC.
Absolutely. I mean, it attracts, just like you said, that 8 p.m. kickoff game, as much as you would say it probably was because of Virginia Tech, it was definitely because of an undefeated Miami for the first time in God knows how long, you know, and we had a bunch of fans show up to that game, and we were at 90% for the first time since 2013 in fan support at a game. Like that was it. Then the next week we sold down and beat Notre Dame, and it was the last great win in Miami, and we were all crying and having a great time. But yeah, I agree with that. It's similar, not calling you all Vandy, but you have an opportunity to be on a stage like that. The Virginia, they get a chance to, if they're playing in elite Miami, at least they could put their product on the same field with that Miami, and maybe even show a good home turnout, because everyone in Virginia wants to come see the number 8th ranked Miami Hurricanes. Even though they may be up on the Cavaliers, they want to get a chance to see them in person and say that they've seen Tyler Van Dyke and Keyshawn and blah, blah, blah. Those are things that I agree 100%.
And I mean, you got two teams that let's face it, neither one of our teams right now are good. Like, to a man,
True.
we ain't good, right? But you've got a sold-out Lane Stadium at 12:30 on a game that's not even on television. You got to go on ESPN3 to see that game, right? So, like, people, this game is marquee even when the teams are bleh.
Crazy, man. It's crazy. But that's what happens when you spend so long building a nice brand. Virginia Tech is, again, a guy from Miami knows about Virginia Tech and can respect that and know some of their historic players and say, oh, I remember watching Cam Chancellor at Virginia Tech pop guys in the Orange Bowl. Like, you know, then he goes off to the Seahawks to do the same thing. So it's a good rivalry. And we're hoping that we can get it back to two ranked teams that really push each other and help each other grow. And we may be 3 or 4 years away from that. But like you said, Miami can go a lot faster just based off of geographic location, probably has the right guy in right now. Recruiting-wise, he's a great recruiter. They could do the 5-year plan in maybe 2.5, as opposed to you all, the way you were going to build it, it might take 5, but when it's there, it could be something to really, really have to line up and play extremely hard if you want to win, especially in Lane Stadium.
Because the other thing, too, with Virginia Tech, right, geographically, we are at an extreme disadvantage, right? Like, try to get to Blacksburg, okay? So here's a perfect example. I am from the northern part of Michigan originally, right? In order for me to fly back home, I have to drive to Roanoke, fly from Roanoke to Charlotte, Charlotte to Atlanta, Atlanta to Detroit, and then Detroit to wherever I'm going in Michigan, right? Miami, I can jump on a plane and I can be anywhere, right? So Miami is the destination, right? Virginia Tech, you have to want to come to Blacksburg. You have to want to be in the mountains. You have to want to be in a rural setting. You have to want to be in a town where everybody knows who the hell you are, right? Like, I mean, Virginia Tech football players walk around campus, they stick out like a sore thumb, right? Like, it's like, oh yeah, that's one of the Virginia Tech football players, right? Like, so you in Miami, you can hide, right? Like, you can be incognito if you want to, but you also have the big city feel. You have all the stuff going on, you know, you got concerts, you got all sorts of stuff, but we don't have all that in Blacksburg. So you got to want to come to Blacksburg. You got to want to be at Virginia Tech and be in the mountains. So it's different. It is definitely a different animal.
And I think that stuff is important for college football. I mean, I watch a couple other college football channels, but we always make sure we're here at the voice of college football. And the thing that Mark has always talked about in the years that even when I was just a fan that watched him was the beautiful part, and now conference realignment has kind of gotten in the way of that if we got LA people playing Iowa, but whatever.
Right.
And that's okay. At the end of the day, you kind of were able to turn on a channel, CBS, ABC, ESPN, ESPN2. You're able to watch all these different, your local channels, watching all these different products. And at the end of the day, you looked at people who kind of took pride in where they were from. You know, the Virginia Tech guys were probably DMV guys, or maybe some leftover Georgia guys. You watch the Miami guys, there are a bunch of South Florida guys on that team, maybe a Georgia, maybe a Louisiana. You watch Alabama, it's a bunch of Alabama guys, Texas guys. But, you know, we took pride in it. And where we're going now, you know, it could be a guy from Fargo, North Dakota playing at at the University of Southern Cal. Who knows?
Yep.
Because it's just all over right now. But I definitely get where you're coming from, man.
So, Paul, when you look at the Virginia Tech's program big picture and you look at what's going on in college football, and we got hit with the big news a year ago with Oklahoma, Texas during the summer, and then things died down, cooled down. People started to speculate what's the next move, and then whack, we get hit upside the head with USC, UCLA to the Big Ten midsummer, and now things seem to have died down. But as soon as we believe that they have, we'll get hit with something else here pretty soon. So, what do you think is the best case scenario and also realistic scenario for Virginia Tech in terms of a landing spot? Is that a stabilized ACC or is that something else?
So I have a good friend who comes on the drive with me every Monday, and he covers Charlotte sports, but he's a West Virginia alum, and we have the conversation all the time about West Virginia and schools into the and hopefully keep the ACC strong. So option one would be to keep the ACC strong, bring in some other schools. A West Virginia makes perfect sense, right? Because you have that Virginia Tech West Virginia rivalry, you have the Virginia West Virginia rivalry, and then you have the Pitt West Virginia rivalry. You want to see something ugly? Go to a Pitt West Virginia game, people. Like, that's some. True. Yeah. Anyway, there's
hold on. Can we episode that?
Yeah.
So where did that come from? Because I mean, I grew up playing the NCAA games, and one random day I was like picking these different teams, and then it was like backyard brawl. What?
Heck yeah.
What is this? And I did not. So
they're only an hour away.
Yeah, they're 75 miles apart. Oh yeah. Because you got to remember. So if you look at West Virginia, right, like a clock, I believe Morgantown. So Morgantown is basically what would be 1 o'clock on West Virginia, and then Pittsburgh is like is in Pittsburgh. So like it's a short drive. There's a lot of hatred there. In fact, so the favorite chant of West Virginia is "Eat SH Pitt," right? So that's their favorite chant. They will be playing Oklahoma State, and you will hear each Pitt, right? Like, it's just like that rivalry arguably might be the most hateful rivalry in college football. Like, there is, like, wow. As a Michigan fan, I respect Ohio State. I respect Penn State. I don't know if I respect East Lansing Community College, but whatever. But like, there's no respect at all between Pitt and West Virginia. That is just a bunch of couch burning, battery throwing, 3 feet. Yeah. Like, that's, it's crazy.
Okay. All right.
I did. You guys will like this. I did meet 2 West Virginia fans that had all of their teeth when they came to play in Blacksburg a couple weeks ago. So.
You found those too.
They were the mayor.
Did they have them when they left?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was us that didn't have our teeth when they left, man. They kicked those down our throat.
Mm-hmm.
I also found out that, Utah and BYU, the Holy War is very bitter. Those people can't stand each other.
Yep.
Well, that would make sense. I mean, anytime you start talking religious wars, it's intense, dude. It gets intense.
Yep.
Yeah, people think of the best or the most bitter rivalries being the best with the most NFL players on the field, but that's not necessarily the case. It's not just because it's Miami, Florida State, or Ohio State, Michigan, or that those are the best rivalries. Those are just the most important ones in the standings and the most people watch. Yes, they create the
those are the ones that bring in the dollar bills.
Yes, look at the TV ratings. My goodness.
Yep.
Absolutely. Appreciate Paul Van Wagner being here. ESPN Blacksburg. Where are the best places to be able to find your work, Paul?
So you can hear us Monday through Friday on the drive, 4 to 6. We do. Sometimes we talk about sports. Sometimes we talk about potato chips. It all depends what we're in the mood for. We're online at espnblacksburg.com. We also have the ESPN Blacksburg app. You can download that, and you can take us with you anywhere, anytime. Pretty easy to find us. We have a lot of fun. We like to chat with the listeners. They text in, so it's good. It's a good time.
Is there anybody worth watching on this Virginia Tech team? Like if somebody just flips in on a Virginia Tech football game, who can
Dax,
play on this team? Who are the
Dax,
building blocks for future good teams?
well, Dax is a senior this year, so he's that
Yeah.
doesn't apply to him. But Dax
Hollifield.
Hollifield is a hell of a
Yeah.
linebacker. That kid's a thumper. I don't know that he's going to get a chance at the next level because he doesn't cover real well. But like if you're looking for a guy that's going to come downhill and stop the run and pop you every time, Dax Hollifield is that guy. Chamari Connor is going to get a crack in the NFL. He's a really good defensive back. He wears number 1 for the Hokies on the defensive side of the ball. Same deal. He can cover, but he can also hit. He's not your Deion Sanders kind of cornerback. He'll step up and he'll punch you in the mouth if you need to. Outside of that, Malachi Thomas on the offensive side of the ball, we finally got him back. He spent the first 4 weeks, maybe 5, in a walking boot. And there was actually talk because of the Hokies' kind of downward slide that it was possible that they might not even play him. They might just try to medical redshirt him, but he's a warrior, man. That kid just wants to come out and play football. So he got himself right. He played last week. He showed up. He played. And I think that his role will continue to expand.
Is that the running back?
Yeah, that's the running back. And he'll give Miami everything they want. What's that?
29?
I think so. I believe that's
I was going to say he was the one guy on film as I'm breaking it down. My film release breaks tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, just so you know. As I'm breaking it down, I'm like, wow, I like the way he runs, man. He very, very he doesn't go down easily, but that makes sense now that you said he's, it looks like he's been through something, that he's worked his way back. So that makes a lot of sense.
As far as the wide receivers and tight ends are concerned, if they drop back to pass, you can grab some popcorn, maybe a hot dog or something like that. That's it.
Well, Wholesome One, we don't want to deliver a spoiler alert. We want everyone to check out your film session, but give us a tease on Virginia Tech. Did you see anything positive there?
For Miami or from Virginia Tech's perspective?
Virginia Tech.
Not necessarily. I mean, their running game is kind of diverse, is unique in its approach. I've seen sometimes where they even like RPO on 3 techniques, meaning like they read a D tackle, read some DN, some tight end play. They're pretty good at run blocking, not necessarily being a big mix match against your linebackers, but got some solid size there. And Miami, when it comes to linebacker against tight end, has been horrible for a very long time. So, I guess that's the best thing Virginia Tech can do quarterback wise and receiver wise. I think that's kind of a lost cause there. Offensive line, when they want to, I've seen some pretty good run blocking out of them, but pass protection is, but then Miami doesn't have a pass rusher. So it could kind of go back and forth with that. But the quarterback that I've seen, he can put the ball up for 50-50 balls every now and again, and Miami has to win those. But again, that's another opportunity for Virginia Tech. Now, Virginia Tech defensively against Miami's offense, in all honesty, I think if Tyler Van Dyke and the passing concepts that we saw last week were to show up, this game would be over pretty fast. But if Miami comes out and tries to establish the run and be Wisconsin South and milk the clock, it'll be way close. And I think Miami would still win, but it'll be one of those like, why did we make this game a lot closer just to prove a point, just to try to, shoot up the masculinity chart because we blew Virginia Tech off the ball, as opposed to just beating them down the field for 60 yards for a touchdown. Like I said before, Mark, 7 points is 7 points. Whether you want to go on an 18-yard drive, ramming it down their throat and blowing them off the ball, or you call a play action bomb right over top, 7 points is 7 points.
Our guy Falconer X is here. Appreciate your support, Falconer X. Good to see you as always. What percentage of Lane Stadium turf is ginseng? So I must explain here.
Okay,
Falconer X has an amazing sense of humor. And way back, there was a caller who badgered me about turf affecting a national championship game. And it was the most ridiculous argument you would ever care to hear in your life. And ever since Falcon Rex loves to go the turf route on his one-liners here at the Voice of College Football.
Lane Stadium. So here's Lane Stadium, pure grass. There's no turf on Lane Stadium. The Lane Stadium grounds crew do an amazing job of keeping that thing up. There's this whole ecosystem thing underneath. If it rains, you don't have to worry about it. They have like this giant drain pan underneath the turf. It's really cool, and it'll pump water out. They can basically pump 4 inches of water an hour out of Lane Stadium and keep the turf good. So we might be getting rain, and if we do, you don't have to worry about it. Rain in Lane Stadium will not affect the play on the field. I can assure you of that.
I have a question for you, Paul.
I have an answer, I hope.
All right. So you've been covering this team. You've gone to plenty of games, right? What is it about Lane Stadium? What is it that these people in the middle of wherever Virginia, Blacksburg, Virginia, just all
you can
come
call it
together?
The middle of nowhere. It's the middle of nowhere, man. Like, we own that.
But my thing is, like, how did you get it? Because people ask me a bunch at NDSU here in Fargo, like, how did we create such a crazy atmosphere of 16,000, but it sounds like 80,000? Well, because it's a dome and you kind of funnel it all in. That's what helps. But it's just like you talk to people around here. Everybody loves football. Everybody knows football. Everybody knows the recruits. They know the walk-ons. Blah blah blah. So how did you all get that in Blacksburg, Virginia, and what about it makes it so special in your opinion?
Well, I think all of the credit in the world goes to Frank Beamer and what he did in his tenure at Virginia Tech, right? Like, it was good before Frank, right? Like, even in the lean years, it was still good before Frank. But, you bring in the atmosphere of Enter Sandman, right? And that kind of kicks things off, and that gets that kind of insane atmosphere going. And then you have the Let's Go Hokie chants that you hear. And, there's so much that kind of goes into all of it, right? Like, there's no one real, like, cut and dry clean answer for that. There's just a lot of tradition there. And honestly, like, if you are driving through the Commonwealth of Virginia at any time on Saturday and heading towards Blacksburg, all of the vehicles around you have the "on our way to see the Hokies play" stickers on the side. You see VT, bumper stickers. You see VT magnets on the vehicles, right? Like, so, and it's a small town, and everybody they just envelop Lane Stadium. And like I said before, like, I think the way Lane Stadium is built, right? It's at an extreme angle, and you are right on top of the game. Like, pay attention if you're watching on TV. Like, if you're down in Miami, pay attention to the sidelines, right? Like, teams that bring the medical tent have to stick the medical tent down in a corner that's cut out a little bit because there's not enough room between the area for the team, the area for television, and the stands themselves. You are right on top of basically the where the team's sidelines are, right? Like, so, I mean, you can honestly probably reach out and smack someone in the helmet if they drift a little too far back behind the benches. So it's just, you're right on top of people, and it's just, again, it's that insane atmosphere of this is what we have, right? There's no Pitbull concert on Saturday in Blacksburg, Virginia, right, to compete with it. There's no, like, nobody's going to the theater in Blacksburg, Virginia on Saturday. Like, nobody's going to, the best we can do is we might go to Walmart and maybe Olive Garden afterwards. So, like, everybody is at that stadium, and it's a pride thing. Like, we set off the seismograph so the National Weather Service in Blacksburg is, as the crow flies, less than a mile from Lane Stadium. And almost every Saturday, and definitely every Thursday night, and anytime there's a night game, but almost every Saturday, when Enter Sandman starts playing and everyone starts jumping in Lane Stadium, we set off the seismograph at the National Weather Service in Blacksburg. We have more earthquakes than anywhere else on the East Coast, according to the National Weather Service, because of Lane Stadium. It's crazy.
Wow.
That's awesome.
That's amazing, man.
I've got this question for you, Paul, and this will do it for me, but we can stay on if you guys have anything else. But this will pretty much do it for me. At this point in a first-year head coach's tenure, there are two very tangible indicators as to the job that he's doing in trying to resurrect, rebuild, all those things. Either the team's better on the field. You know, he took over a 2-10 team and they're on their way to a 6-6 season. He's just automatically made them better on the field by just sheer developing players that aren't really that good into something, maximizing personnel and scheme and all those things. Or we see it on the recruiting trail. The recruiting class is looking really sharp for this year. And with Brent Pry, at this point, we're not really seeing anything tangible in either direction. So is there anything that he's brought that gives you hope, optimism that he's the guy, or are you still in the wait and see mode?
No, I'll tell you this. Recruiting is a perfect example. So again, back to the Justin Fuente area. Thanks, Mike. Back to the Justin Fuente era. They did a really good job of alienating every high school program in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Like if that staff walked into a school in Richmond, in Northern Virginia, in Norfolk, in wherever, Hampton, it didn't matter. The coaches there hated them. They treated the high school coaches like they were second-class citizens. They wouldn't give them the time of day, and every single one of them, to a man. I have a really good friend that lives down in Hampton, Virginia, and Phoebus High School is in Hampton, Virginia. If you know anything about Phoebus High School, Phoebus, it's down a little bit right now, but for decades, Phoebus High School produced some of the best football players in Virginia. Like, those kids came out of Phoebus, and they looked like grown-ass men when they showed up on campus as freshmen, right? So he was sitting there, and he was talking to one of the assistant coaches, and he was like, yeah, so, like, what do you think of Justin Fuente at Virginia Tech? And the coach turned to him, deadpan, looked at him. Can I swear on here? Is that okay?
Sure.
I don't.
Go right ahead.
He turned to him deadpan. He goes, fuck that guy. And that was the end of the conversation, right? Like, so how do you go into arguably one of the top 5 schools in Virginia for producing talent and piss the coaches off so bad that in a bar to a stranger that they don't know who just asked you what you think of Virginia Tech, that's your response. And that's what Justin Fuente did. So now it's up to Brent Pry and the staff to go into all these schools, and you got to repair that relationship, right? You got to rebuild that, and you got to rebuild that from the ground up, because we all know these high school coaches are loyal, but if you screw them, you're done, right? Like,
yeah, you're done. You're done.
Yeah, they're not sending their kids to your school if they don't trust you. And so what they've done, Mark, and this is a really long-winded answer, and I apologize for that, but what they've done is they've begun to rebuild those relationships, right? They had coaches from all over Virginia come in for a coaches conference, and they put them up, and they were like, all right, we're going to put you up. We're going to go through, here's kind of what we do. Like, we're going to talk to you guys about what you do. We're going to try to help you streamline things if you want. We're going to answer any questions you have. They brought all the coaches in. It was a weekend-long, basically symposium on college football coaching or high school football coaching from the college coaches. They go to the schools, and their first stop is to the coach's office. Right? Like, it's not just going to the principal's office and being like, get me the wholesome one. I want to talk to him because we're recruiting him, right? They go to the coach's office. They sit down. They talk. They spend time. They're engaged with the coaches. They know them, and they're starting to rebuild those relationships. I talk to the guys over at Rivals and over at 24/7 Sports all the time, and they say the biggest thing that they hear from the recruits is that their coaches like this new Virginia Tech staff. So that's that first building block that they have to put down, and they're doing it. And again, it's Rome wasn't built in a day, and this thing isn't going to get fixed overnight. But repairing those relationships, because Richmond is a hotbed. The 757, which is Norfolk, Virginia Beach, Hampton, that area, that's a hotbed. Northern Virginia is a hotbed, right? And Penn State had been picking kids out of Northern Virginia like it was a job. And now Brent Pry has those relationships, and he's continuing to build them, and that's the building block right there that gives me hope that the future will be bright for Virginia Tech.
I was gonna say he's the main reason. I mean, he was a big
yeah.
reason why. I mean, Chase Young grows up. He's in Maryland and grows up a big Tarps fan. You know, had a lot of respect for Virginia Tech. Went to a couple camps there, but because a bunch of there was an influx to the Big Ten that the DMV didn't really rated by Ohio State and Penn State and teams of that nature. I just said Ohio State out loud.
Man, wow.
And that's what happened.
We call him Columbus. Actually, we call them Ohio. We don't even give them.
Yeah, I was about to say, isn't that like the ultimate disrespect? Just call them Ohio.
Yeah. This will be my last time on the show, gentlemen. It was
call them champions. Just call them champions.
You can. You can.
Paul, you know, personally, you know, I think you're a great guy, and I've got a lot of hope for you, Paul. You got a lot of hope, but if you continue to go up and consume that air and breathe that air in, it's not good for you. You're going to be a lost cause at some point. I still have hope for you at this point.
The air in Ann Arbor has a little bongy smell to it, if you know what I mean. Just saying.
I know what you mean.
Good God. Oh, man. All right, Paul, what's our final predictions before we get out of here, buddy?
All right. Do you want me to go first? I can go first. This is easy for me.
Go ahead.
I told you guys before we went on, I think Virginia Tech keeps this thing close-ish in the first half, right? Like it might be 24 to 17. It might be 21 to 10. It may even be closer than that. It kind of depends how Miami gets off the bus, right? Like I can even see this thing being like 17-14 at the half. Miami in the lead, not Virginia Tech. But I think that Miami comes out in the second half and they just kind of exert their will. We get to see, you know, who the real talent is, and we get to see those guys kind of show up and play. I would say Miami probably hangs 42 on Virginia Tech at the end of the day, and most of that comes in the second half. And I think if Virginia Tech can get to 20, that's probably the best we can hope for. But I would say probably something closer to 42-17, 42-14.
Ooh, man. You're a lot higher on Miami than even I am. And I'm not one of those people that takes something that was just a one-off and think that that's going to be the new norm. Mm-hmm. I've watched this Miami team struggle no matter who the opponent was to score points. I've also seen this Miami team have horrible communication and have players get bombed, whether we're playing Middle Tennessee State, Bethune-Cookman, and Southern Miss, or playing Texas A&M and North Carolina. So I, for one, I'm very nervous about this game on Saturday. I am extremely nervous. And I'll be honest with you, I just have Miami winning 34-24. I don't see a team that comes that shows me that they give a damn. I don't see a team that shows me that they want to come up and score points. And I'm down on them until they can show me something. And Miami fans are hard on me about that, but at the end of the day, I still love this U. But what I'm watching, the Josh Gaddis experiment, the Tyler Van Dyke turning into an undrafted player, it's just stuff that I've seen happen before, and I just don't know if we're going to get this explosive Miami under the Mario Cristobal era.
I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not one for moral victories, fellas, but if Virginia Tech puts up 24 on Miami, I'm good. I don't even care if they lose. I'm good. That shows me something offensively. They haven't done that this year. I'm telling you right now. They did it against Pitt, but Pitt's not Miami.
We'll see, buddy. I hope you're right. Well, I hope you're right.
I hear both of you, and I think you're both valid in your concerns and in your, well, there's not a whole lot of praise going to either team here, but because Miami should not have an issue in this game. But we could have said this how many times this year. Miami just continues not to look very good in a lot of ways. But Virginia Tech is such a limited football team. They are just so limited that, they could play a perfect game for the first half. And like Paul says, they could be up 13-10. And then Miami could make that lead go away and become a double-digit lead like that. And football games are they're long.
Right.
And both of you guys know basketball too, and Paul has covered basketball. You know those NCAA tournament games, when there's an underdog, those games go by like that. And that's why you see so many upsets. But football games are long games with a lot of plays, and it takes a lot for an underdog to hang with it. But, and I think the point spread is fair, because I think Miami's more like a 17 or 18 point better team. But because of Lane Stadium, because Miami keeps tripping up over itself, that I understand why the spread's only 7. I would go more in the 34-20 range, Miami. Yeah, so I'm right there.
The funny part is, in the off season, when we talked about this, I'm super amped, like we about to do this thing 10-2, and maybe A&M and Clemson, but Miami will run it. We'll see Clemson again in the championship. And now I've watched this team play football. I've watched the spring game. I've watched training camp. I've watched the first 5 games of the season, and I'm nowhere am I impressed, nor am I satisfied with the product that the Miami Hurricanes are putting on the football field. And we may be able to get a nice win on Saturday, because Virginia Tech just honestly isn't the best team. But this team, anytime they have a little bit of inkling of success, they tend to start to smell their own ass, and then they don't show up the next week, and it's horrible. And that's the kind of stuff that you got to filter out of the program. It's up to Coach Cristobal and the leaders of this team to do that.
Now that Georgia Tech finally got Jeff Collins to hit the road, and this Coach Key, who took over, miraculously has him beating Pitt and Duke the last 2 weeks, we may find out who the worst team in the ACC is when Virginia Tech and Virginia play the last game of the season. And so...
is that considered a rivalry, like battle of the Tech Bowl? No, is that a Tech Bowl?
Yeah, no, that's a huge rivalry. They play for the Commonwealth Cup. That's a big one. Virginia Tech, I mean, it's a rivalry, but Virginia has only held the Commonwealth Cup for 1 season in the last 2 decades. So it's not really it's a rivalry because it's within the confines of Virginia. On the field, And the only reason Virginia won that game 2 or 3 seasons ago was they had a quarterback who was absolutely outstanding. And so I don't know exactly what the numbers were, but if they put up 485 yards, he single-handedly put up 470 of those 485 yards.
Oh, I was asking about Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech. I know Virginia and GT is definitely. I know that's a rivalry.
No, not really. Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech. The only thing with that one is, and I get off on a tangent every time with this. The Georgia Tech people like to steal the T in Tech from Lane Stadium. So it's not really a rivalry. It's more of a thievery thing. So apparently there's this whole. It's. If you went
like
to
they
Georgia
go up and rip it off of the wall, like the actual T.
Yeah, the T. So on the front of Lane Stadium, it just says, Lane Stadium, Virginia Tech. And they'll go up, and someone they'll pull the T off of there, and they'll steal it. Apparently, it's this whole thing. You're supposed to steal the T from your opponent's stadium if there is one, if you can. But at the end of the game, you're supposed to return it. It's supposed to be like good, clean, college kid fun, but they never return it. So now whenever Georgia they never return it. Like if you drive by Lane Stadium and to look for it, the T in Virginia Tech is a different color because it hasn't been like the sun hasn't affected the color the way the rest of the sign has. But yeah, so now they post a security person the entire week at the Virginia Tech Lane Stadium sign because some jackwagon from Georgia Tech will steal the damn T. Yeah, no, it's not. But it's not really a rivalry.
All of that made sense to me until you said it was just any T.
So it's
aren't they fashioning themselves as the only real Tech in the conference? That's why they steal the T from Virginia Tech. That's what I'm guessing, right?
Apparently, so I'm trying to think. So, for you all, because it's Hard Rock Stadium, there would be no tea for them to steal. But apparently this has been going on for decades. This is old Georgia Tech tomfoolery. And I had a friend of mine who's a Georgia Tech alum. He's a friend of Mike McDaniel's too. Explain it to me one day. And apparently there's this whole thing at Georgia Tech where there's a bunch of teas all over the place, and like the goal is to collect them. I don't know. If you went to Georgia Tech, you'd be a nerd too. That's all I can say.
That makes sense. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we can leave it at that.
Yeah.
Maybe we would understand it if we went to Georgia Tech, Mark. Wow.
I don't even know that they fully understand it. They just know that they're supposed to steal the tea from the sign.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right, fellas. Good stuff.
Sorry to derail the show today, guys, by the way.
No, you're here to talk, Paul. We got you. We only get this every so often. So everybody, you get Paul each weekday on ESPN Blacksburg, and you can download the app, right, for those people that aren't in the area, correct?
Yep, App Store, Google Play Store. Just search for ESPN Blacksburg. It just looks like what Mark has there on the sign, on the banner. You search for that, you can find it. It's got that logo on it right there. Easy to find. Download it. Like I said, sometimes we talk sports, sometimes it's potato chips. We did 12 minutes last week on potato chips.
I'm more of a sweets guy than a salty guy, but I could still chime in on that.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Paul is also kind enough to simulcast the Hokie House Virginia Tech pregame show on the Voice of College Football as well. So we appreciate that.
1 o'clock on Wholesome One. What are you doing? I'm sorry. What are you doing at 10 o'clock on Saturday?
Nothing. You got my message. You can hit me up if you want.
Yeah, I'll shoot you the link. I'll shoot you the link for this. Mike McDaniel usually joins us on here also, so we'd love to have you come on.
You know,
I would love
Paul, to. Now that I'm thinking about it, let's simulcast that here on the Miami channel as well.
Okay,
we'll do that. We'll promote
Yeah.
it big and try to get some folks in here.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I will warn you all in advance. Hurricanes. It's mostly Virginia Tech, but absolutely we tend to, well, especially now that we suck, we tend to be pretty positive towards our opponents. Like we highlight the positives, except for Pitt. I don't like Pat Narduzzi. Anyway, I digress.
Few people do.
That's
He tends to make more enemies every few weeks. Wholesome One, of course, everyone knows. Get on over there. If there's anybody that by the time this is watched by, it's typically about 3,000 people that have not subscribed to the Wholesome One's channel, I don't know what you're doing. So please, Wholesome One Holloway right here on YouTube. Get on over there. Check out his work. It is first rate. Guys, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, man. Okay.
Thank you.
Next
guys.
Thursday
Thank you
night
guys
at
for
8,
joining us.
folks. See you then.